we will be discussing teacher feedback in second language writing. I know this is an exciting topic for you guys because actually, as a writing teachers, you have already been very experienced in this aspect, right? It's provide feedback on your students' writing for how many years? 5 years, 7 years? Wow. 5 years. Well, see, I can tell.
Almost 10.
Almost 10 years, see? So I can tell you guys are very experienced already. So today, I just want to, show you some really important findings, drawing on our literature, and current body of literature, and to give you some suggestions on how to give the feedback in an effective way. Okay. Still, there are some, maybe new knowledge that you can, get away from. But here, I want to hear first about your experience of providing feedback. So what specific feedback do you usually provide on students' writing? Do you focus on the forms, or do you always focus on the contents, or you keep the balance between the two?
Try to keep the balance if you can do that.
Okay, good. So you keep the balance, you try to comment on not only the contents, organization, but also the forms, right? In which way?
To be honest, before just reading these papers and chapters, I didn't know too much about how to give a feedback.
Okay.
So this is what I did. Whenever I had a paper to correct, so first I corrected according to the structure or coherence and cohesion, and then finally I just added some points at the end of the, for example, that essay that the student can follow to make the paper better.
That's right.
But now after reading this, now I think I've got some new ideas to do.
Okay, so what is the specific idea that
for example,
you feel like you want to do in the future?
Yeah, for example, now, I'm not going to be really very picky about the grammatical structures. Instead, is to focus more on meaning, and the organization. And then try to give feedback, not exactly when a student has done the paper. It's during the process to help him how to go ahead, how to make progress, and then finally,
Great point.
Yeah.
That's right. Especially we are talking about the process writing, right? So we talked about the writing process should be, say, recursive. So they actually, maybe at the very beginning, everything was a mess, but we should actually encourage them to revise and revise. So during this specific process, you definitely want to provide a lot of feedback, right? On what? Maybe in the initial draft, you may really focus on the contents or organization and the global issues. Interesting. So at this moment, we do not really worry about the grammatical issues. But we always, say, have students bear in mind that the accuracy is important, right? But maybe in the very beginning, like the first draft, and then you commented on the, say, global issues, then you get back to, students, and students, say, based on all this feedback, and then continue to revise it, right? I think so. I think it's a good choice. Now, any other, say, insights about the formats you use? So, Reza mentioned that we comment on not only the forms, but also the contents. All of us agree, right? Because we believe both global issues and local issues are important, right? But what are the forms, or what are the, say, specific techniques do you use? I was talking about some, maybe even like tools. What did you use?
I've tried both the coding and not coding.
Oh.
The coding for me was a disaster because I guess if I'd had him, if I knew I was going to have the students for like a year or two, I would try and get them to do a coding scheme. But I usually would have them in 16-week courses, and by the time they figured out the coding, they would move on to another course. So the coding's great, but you have to really be simple with it.
Okay.
Because you're almost making them learn something new on top of having to learn something new already.
Okay, so what specific codes so are you talking about? So do you usually use like a word choice?
Well, I
something
use
like a grammatical structure, something like that.
And I would use symbols for each one of them.
Okay.
And I just, maybe it was how I set it up, maybe I didn't model it right, frame it right, or however, but it did not work out well for me. And so then I went back to what I usually did was, where it would be comments,
That's fine.
linking comments, explaining, and I typically avoided grammatical errors unless they're
Okay.
systemic
Okay,
and stuff like that.
yeah,
And then towards the end of the semester, when it came test time, I don't get to make the test, but I would make sure that the grammatical things that were on the test, that they were.
I see. So that is to say, in your opinion, so at this moment, you focus more, say, on say, explicit teaching approach, right?
Yeah.
You try to make it explicit.
Yeah.
Rather than let them assume or guess or even, make a good consumption, whatever assumptions based on their knowledge, right?
Right.
You want to give a clear and explicit knowledge.
Yeah, I
So
would
what
never-
you can improve.
Yeah, I would never say there are these kind of errors go fine.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Just with the students I've had, that wouldn't work.
That's interesting. Later we'll talk about the error treatment as well. So have you noticed that the teacher feedback in this section, in this lesson, we not only focus on the comments, but also the error treatment. So usually, if we talk about error treatment, we only focus on the grammatical, say, knowledge, and actually there's huge debate. There has been a lot, huge debate still, say, till now. Because on one hand, the scholars like, say, Truscott, have you heard that? So the scholar just did not think that it is really helpful because from their research studies, in the long run, maybe students still make certain mistakes, whatever, or they can even say pick up whatever they learn and then they can fix themselves in the future. So in their mind, it's not really helpful for you to do a lot of corrective feedback.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like say the professors just feel like that is not okay because we still want to treat the errors. We still want to guide the students, especially the English as a foreign language students, right? English as a second language students, because they didn't get, further opportunities to learn language, to learn how to be accurate, right? So later we will discuss that. So very good one. So any other thoughts?
I like peer feedback a lot. So
Uh-huh.
when I recognize those, I also use the coding schemes too. But when I realize there are specific error patterns that are recurring amongst multiple learners, what I'll do is I pick that particular error and an example of it, and have as a group annotated specific areas where what makes it not cohesive here.
That's right.
What word do you think we can replace it with to make it more tied together? So once we do those processes, I feel like it gets them to first ask themselves the right questions when they write as well. On word choice, cohesion, cohesive devices that they can use, and also grammatical issues. So I do like the whole peer review,
That's
group
right.
review, collective review.
So seems like the peer review sessions make students feel even more motivated.
Yes.
And also they got more scaffolding from their peers. For example, if they themselves do not understand what this code mean, and then they go to check and discuss with their peers, right? They kind of like discover the meaning together, right? Yeah, exactly. So that's the reason we always believe we want to have not only instructor feedback but also the peer feedback. So I feel like that now it is so common, right? I mean, since everybody use teacher feedback and peer response in the say writing classes.
Something about peer feedback I think is really important
Uh-huh.
to let the students know exactly what
Yes.
to do.
Yes.
It's because when you ask them to work together, they don't know, they do exactly the same thing. Again, just they read and try to check each other. Exactly.
That's right,
Grammatically,
that's right.
yeah.
So that is to say training is significant. Training is so important. A lot of actually research have already discussed how training, actually leads to the significant outcome. So like a Taiwanese, the scholar from Taiwan who actually wrote a lot of work about peer response. Dr. Min, MIM, so possibly you guys will be discussing her work when you do the workshop next week, right? Very good.
just real quickly on his point too, I think by giving them scaffolding and telling them kind of what to look for, it takes the pressure off them to peer review somebody else's paper.
Yeah.
If they,
Yeah,
if
that's right.
they're not just complaining about their paper, the teacher told me I have to do these certain things,
That's right.
so it takes the pressure off where
Good.
otherwise they might feel like, I don't want to say anything bad about your paper,
Exactly.
space and that kind of thing.
In order to save face, right?
Yeah,
You know,
and I have
yeah.
noticed something. If they know that, okay, if they comment something, if you as a teacher, you want to go and see what they have done,
Mhm.
they
Yeah.
really change the idea.
Yeah.
They try to ignore, they try to, because that's their friend, as you said, they try to make
Stay
some,
friends.
exactly, yeah. But as soon as they know, okay, no, you don't care about it, yes, just they are there to help each other, then they help.
Right.
That's right. That's right. See? Very nice discussion here.
Because it's a social act, it
That's
helps them as well, because then it's like, oh, we did this together. You know,
Yeah.
it's not like I did it by myself.
That's right. That's right. Well, good. So a little bit about research. So the research on teacher feedback, say as you can tell, there are different approaches, to these say studies. So here I want to mention three. One is a quasi-experimental study. Why quasi here? Because usually you really do not get a chance to randomize your say subjects, right? So for instance, I have a specific class, and I have another class. I just kind of randomly believe, so this is so convenient. I use my class A as my experimental group, and I use my class B as my control group, and then I use one approach. I mean, writing say feedback approach in this class, but I do not use that one in another class. Instead, I use just the traditional one, right? For example, if I'm very interested in providing feedback using, for instance, a screencast automatic. Have you ever heard of that? You do not just have the written comments. You can also have your video there, and you actually talk about what you are going to comment, right? So usually, I know this is actually interesting area too, and a lot of research articles, you can find, right? So for example, I do think that, okay, I just randomly pick my class A. I will do the video feedback with them, right? Versus the traditional, text-based. So that is quasi-experiment study. And then we can, of course, analyze the text. So the text analysis is very important because we want to know for sure how the teachers comment on the students' paper. So we want to connect a lot of documents, right? The papers, including, of course, students' papers, but with the teachers' comments on it, right? To analyze specifically what comments or the, scope of those comments or the areas of the comments, right? Or even how the comments are incorporated into students' revision, right? So a lot of studies actually explored not only how the teachers write feedback, they actually figure out or explore whether the teachers' feedback are actually successfully incorporated into students' writing or into students' revision. Or even they can do longitudinal study to see whether in the long run students actually have improved their writing competency, right? So another one is survey. Of course, we know survey is usually large scale. Then you can see a lot of usually the samples here, right? A lot of collect the data with a lot of subjects. Here I'm talking about the students maybe, right? And then maybe to derive their perceptions of how teacher feedback is helpful or effective for them, right? Okay, so I'm very familiar with these three approaches, right? Then of course there are a lot of findings, but generally we know teacher feedback can be very helpful and effective. That's the reason we want to use it, right? Okay, so let us discuss how we can have our teacher feedback effective. These are the principles. I want you to discuss these principles one by one, relating to your own experience, okay? Number one, feedback is most effective when it is delivered at the intermediate stages of the writing process. So we kind of, say, test upon it a lot just now because we don't think that, okay, you submit the paper, then I write a comment, done. No, we always want to what? We want to have an evolving process, right? So what do you think of this? Do you think that you consider this already? Would that be helpful for your students? What do you think?
Between the drafts, between the first, usually I feel like between the first and second draft is the most crucial point when they're still designing what to put in, because that's when the content part is. And so I typically have student conferences between the first and second drafts within that time. And then between the second and third drafts, when they're getting closer to the revision and editing part of the writing, then I do peer feedback. Because I feel like when I do that, it helps me personally. In my teaching.
And also, your interaction with students will actually scaffold their peer response session as well. Right?
Please.
This was, it was.
You have a lot to say, I know, you guys.
Yeah, this was one of my bigger takeaways.
Okay, good.
Was, instead of the most detailed feedback being at the end, when there's a chance to react to it.
That's right.
Yeah, that was kind of like when I was reading, I was like, oops, why haven't I done this before? So I'm going to take this and apply it to a lot of different educational settings.
That's right. So sometimes we just feel like if you really just focus on the last paper, I mean the final draft, and you as teachers may kind of like regret that you actually invested so much time, and possibly the student actually didn't get a chance to digest everything, or they didn't bother at all, right? I mean, in the past, I actually read a lot of research articles that showed that the students just feel like, oh, the red inks are so bothering for them, and they just throw them away, when they wrote, on papers, right? Go trash, and I feel like that's terrible because actually we invest a lot of time. We try to help them, and we want them to know that our, feedback is actually, more than helpful for them, right?
Yeah. Something that I have noticed is, for example, imagine, yes, you give feedback to a student, but he's a PhD student. Okay. This is the final draft. The teacher or the professor gives some comments. Be sure that he or she will go and work on the comments, practice them. He or she will try to use them. But the students, yes, when they have the final draft and you give them the comments, they don't even care about it. Especially if you have it graded. Yes. For example, this is your grade and these are the comments. They won't even read the comments. Yes. But when it is intermediate stage, at least you know that you have to make them revise it. Then in the second draft, you can see did they have used the comments or not.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think this is why it is
exactly good. This is a good point. This is what I actually discussed earlier. I told you guys, in my opinion, I even kind of have a specific weight for each specific draft. Like my first draft, it counts for whatever person gave. And then you actually didn't score at all, but I mean, say this is just a part of their score, right? And then you continue to just work with them right after the feedback. The students revise it and work on it, and then you give like the rest, 60 or 70%.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that is much better, right? That's interesting. This made me just now think of my own class, the course with you guys. I seem to have like the comment on your, say, final draft for each assignment. However, still that is helpful because that will help you write your second paper, right? I usually have my comment on the reflection paper 1, and then if I take a look at your second reflection paper, hey, I didn't see any progress. Then I know you didn't incorporate my previous comments quite well, right? So I try to actually track the students' progress in this way. But in some, degree, we still this specific, feedback become very effective because that is in the process, right? Okay, we still want to say that it is delivered at the intermediate stages,
Yeah.
right?
I just thought of another advantage of this,
Mhm.
and it's more of an advantage for us as teachers.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you're grading students like 25, 30 and
That's right.
up papers, it's a lot.
Mhm.
And if you're asking them to write maybe 8 to 10 page paper,
Mhm.
it can be a lot. So grading on our part. So when you do the intermediate stages, you're already familiar with the student's topic. You already
Yeah.
have read. So when you're finally grading the final
Yeah.
project, it's a
Exactly.
lot easier because you're just going through it to make sure that they get
Exactly.
the comments, like Reza said. So the grading becomes a lot easier because you've already
exactly.
pre-graded it almost.
That's right. That's right. So this step-by-step stage would definitely be helpful for us too. Very good. How about second one? Teachers should provide feedback on all aspects of writing, including content, rhetorical structure, grammar, style, and mechanics, whatever. A lot of the different categories, right? So.
I think yes, but he should I cannot say this word. Prioritize it, yeah.
Okay.
To see which one is the most important one
Yeah.
that he really cares about it, or according to his standards or strategies, which one is the most important that he expects from the students. So
Very
we should
good.
go to that one first, and then I don't know really how to do that, but this is what I.
Don't you think this is also connected to our course goals as well,
Yeah.
right? Or our course objectives. For instance, in this specific piece, I really want the students learn better about the genre, right? For example, they never wrote, for example, they didn't write annotated bibliography at all in the past. Then for sure at this moment, I focus maybe more on the genre knowledge. That is to say, I will definitely focus on the rhetorical structure, right? As well as the move, that's right, as well as the content, of course, to demonstrate their knowledge of these readings, right? Right? It makes sense.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah.
Yours
So-
does.
yeah.
Right.
That's right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you definitely want to, say, kind of like see through
Yeah.
all these the functions of different, aspects and how this relate to your teaching goals,
Yeah.
your course objectives, right? Yeah. Any other comments?
For me, I don't really pay too much attention to the surface level errors, like the little grammatical mistakes, maybe present and past and those ones. But if I see that it's recurring, this particular student keeps making that same one, then I bring it to their attention.
Okay. But are you talking about Spanish as a foreign language class?
Yes, French as a foreign language.
Then I might want to get some feedback from you. For example, if I made some mistake, since this is the early stage, I still don't know, and I really want to be accurate in this moment. I mean, I am as a student, right? I may be happy if you correct me.
Especially if,
I actually like that.
especially if those errors will be fossilized. Yes,
Mhm.
you're afraid if
Yeah.
you don't correct them, they
Right,
will do
they
that
will
again.
keep it.
and again.
Yeah.
So usually,
Don't you think so? That's actually the debate where the Ferris and what's the Truscott, because we as teachers, of course, want to help the students in whatever ways, right? But I mean, totally, you can definitely kind of ignore or certain tiny mistakes in for example, first comment, right? But on the last, draft, you still want to comment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for me, I think this is something to do with the process of it, right? For example, in your first draft, I feel that's bad. If I kind of comment a lot of grammatical issues, that would make you so unconfident, and you feel like, oh, French writing is bad. I have really very negative experience, right? However, right after that, you kind of encourage me and you help me better in whatever organization, whatever contents, and then maybe on the last draft, you'll see my paper is really in a good shape, but I can be even more competent in the future because I have already, getting better about the, French structures, whatever.
And
Right.
usually I supplement it with oral corrective feedback because if they write something,
okay.
I noticed that for French learners especially,
Yeah.
the written knowledge doesn't always correlate with their oral
Exactly.
knowledge. They might in their mind know that, oh, this verb is conjugated this
Exactly.
way, but when they write it, for some reason, it just doesn't transfer that way.
Yeah.
So I ask them whenever I'm giving them feedback, what did you mean here? And they're like, oh, sometimes I don't even get to it and they already get it. They're like, oh, yeah, this is what I meant.
They have the meta-linguistic knowledge
Yeah.
already, but they haven't made mistakes
Yeah.
in the oral print. I know, this is actually my problem. I can read, I would say. I'm pretty good at reading. I mean, when I was a college student, but I cannot understand, especially during the conversation. It is really hard. Let alone speaking. Right? Only just like very simple conversation, it's okay. Yeah.
I kind of agree a lot with what she said too as well. And if the systematic part is, if there's random mistakes, I don't count off. But if there's something systematic, you owe it to them to point out that you have kind of an error.
That's right. Exactly. Great. So that is again something to do with the error treatment. So we'll discuss it later. Okay, wonderful. So number 3, we teachers should bear in mind the teacher feedback should be clear and concrete to assist the students with revision. Meanwhile, teachers need to be careful not to take over others' texts, right? We don't want to actually say appropriate their text. This is not your text. This is your student's text, right? We sometimes feel like, oh, I'm trying to help them. I even want to write for them. That is actually not what we need, right? I don't know. Do you think that would be helpful or not? You help them through the whole process. You correct a lot of mistakes for them. I mean, you provide a lot of corrective feedback, whatever.
This is what I exactly experienced. Yes.
Already.
While getting ready for the TOEFL exam, so the writing part. So I studied different samples, especially those who had the whole grade. And after a while, just writing down, then I noticed that, okay, this is not my writing. This is what they have a format. They expect that format, and just I'm writing according to that format.
Okay.
Yes.
So who gave you the format?
So exactly the books that they have out there. Yes.
Oh, you mean the resource books? that you
Exactly.
actually
Yeah. The
refer
resource
to?
books that they have the references. When you go to them, you see different formats there. You just follow them. And even, for example, you ask other people, there's more experienced people to help you, correcting you. Exactly, they correct you according to the rules that they have there. So after a while, you think, and it happens, yes, when you want to write something out of that format, yes, you see, oh, you cannot write very well. But when you want to write exactly the same as that they have there, so you write very well. And you know that, okay, if you follow these formats, I don't know, these rules, okay, you will get a good grade.
So then to say, in my understanding, so those templates would be very helpful, right?
Yeah.
For the test. It's
For
like
the
how
test.
It's like how the
Exactly.
5-paragraph essay has ruined college students.
Yeah.
Because they come into college, they think like that.
It's
They think an introduction, 3 points, conclusion. And so it's hard to
That's
get
right.
out of that rut.
Exactly. See, all the time you're writing according to that.
Yeah.
Yes. You're studying, I don't know, for 6 or 7 months, just all those rules. Yes.
And so you have that, you scaffolded and templated it, that built into your head.
Yeah. And all the time you think, okay, this is not my writing.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it kind of templates ruin authenticity
Yeah.
because now you're just following a manual.
Okay, the templates. For me, I feel sometimes templates would be helpful. Right?
Yeah, it's really helpful
That's
because,
right.
yeah, you know, okay, how to start, how to write.
I know what you mean. Since like your talent for creativity has already been
Exactly.
stifled,
I think, yeah.
something like that, right?
It's like training wheels. When kids start riding a bike, they put like little wheels on the bottom so that they don't fall. Eventually, they have to be taken off. But if you leave it on, the kid is just riding. But when it gets to a real bike, he may not be able to ride a real bike because he's used to riding a bike with the training wheels.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something.
Makes good sense here. Yeah. The clear and concrete feedback, of course, right? We are very sure that we want to give the clear and concrete. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, I have a question. So in the Chromebook, under that point, they mentioned this thing from a study by Conrad and Goldstein from 1999, where he said that they did a case study and found that teachers' comments that challenge students' argumentation and logic were most likely to be problematic for student athletes. And that's page 124. And I was like, I wonder in what ways that can be problematic. Because in my opinion, if somebody's given feedback on the logic and argumentation, that's actually going to be good for the student.
I think that at this moment, they argue that the students actually are the owner of the text. We as teachers are just like the helper or facilitator. We try to, or you just the sounding board, whatever. We really don't want to kind of like push, say a lot of ideas on the student's paper because their arguments are different from ours, right? Sometimes I should say arguments are kind of like, objective, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe what you think, oh, this is not so good, but on the other hand, maybe that argument doesn't make a good sense, right? I think at this moment, when I read that, I feel like they just want to tell us that this is actually their paper. They need to show their agency. They own something to do with ownership. So once again, not to take over, say their texts, right? So I didn't know whether when you graded your provided feedback on your student paper, did you really kind of like challenge their arguments?
It's because of my own learning experiences as a student. When I was writing, my French teacher always asked me to think about rhetoric and think about my audience and who I'm trying to convince. So my examples have to be something that holds water. So if I give an argument in a paragraph and he's like, that example is not good enough, go think again and come up with a better example. So that was why I was kind of thinking that's actually helpful for students to think about the logic that they're using in their paper, and not just say anything and just say, oh, because it's my opinion, that's the right thing. Because if somebody says something like, for example, this is controversial, but like, I believe that because years ago people believed that people of color were of a lower IQ than other people of other races. So they use that as an argument in the paper. As a teacher, do you still let them stand by that logic, or do you point it out and say, okay, how about this? How about this? Think about this as well.
Yeah, you definitely want to let them think more because you feel like there's, kind of like not the true, truth there. So maybe something, and actually you mentioned something about the evidence. I think that's good too. But again, the evidence is used to support the argument, right? But the students definitely, if they have a certain thesis statement, right, you help them, actually continue with their own route, and then you help them to say their argument is still, a good beginning, right? But you help them find out the really strong evidence to support their arguments, right? So that is actually what we can do, right? But again, for that specific quotation there, I just feel like they want to support. Teachers don't want to take over their tests. They don't want to really comment a lot on what they thought about this topic, right? Or criticize their basic understanding of the certain issue, right? Because different people have different perspectives. What do you think?
I think that is the critical thinking. It's just let your students think, yes, but don't, for example, instill your thoughts into their mindsets.
You're not trying to help them make the argument, and you're not trying to win the argument.
Yes,
Right.
that's right.
So,
It's like a balance thing
Right.
as a
That's
teacher.
right. That's right. Very good.
And that was one of the hardest things for me when I first started writing the writing center.
Uh-huh.
I would see the students come in with these papers, making an argument or paper something,
Mhm.
and the temptation is to say, it'd sound better if you did this.
Right.
That was really hard for me not to do that, to let them, that was their paper, let's just, kind of maybe
That's right.
structure,
Try to do
yeah,
that.
but not rewrite it for them.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
It was really hard for me. I was like, sound better. So you say
Yeah.
this.
Yeah,
I have to catch myself.
I know.
Shut up.
Exactly. So, exactly. Very good. Very good. Yeah. That's right. The next one, teachers do not need to respond to every single flaw or weakness on every single writing. Instead, so here, the word, right? So prioritize the areas of concern and selectively respond to the most important features. We can't agree with this more, right? Okay, we discussed this already. So there can be tons of minor mistakes, right? So you really see these patterns or certain trends. For example, you have worked with students for at least 5 weeks. Maybe they have already submitted 3 papers to you, and you feel like, oh, something wrong with the article every time. Then for sure, you want to point it out. You really need to work harder on your articles, try to get a good comment, right? Something like that. You should definitely, respond to the most important features. Okay, well, they learn how you can do. Then teacher feedback must take individual and contextual variables into account. How do you understand this?
Like individual learner strategies, that student learning differences. So maybe if some students are more visual learners, to take that into consideration while giving feedback.
Oh, sounds great. So, for example, I mentioned the screencast video feedback, right? Okay, different ways in order to address students' needs, right? Yeah. Any other thoughts about these contextual variables?
It's that, and it kind of ties in with the previous point.
Mhm.
I've had students, depending on kind of where their country, where they're from, that if I didn't, if there were mistakes that I didn't show them,
Mhm.
and they found out about it, they were mad because they wanted to know. Well, why didn't you tell me?
Exactly.
If they would come back to the paper and say, "Well, you didn't tell me that I got this wrong. Why didn't you tell me that I got this wrong?"
That's right.
That was the point of the paper, but they want to know
Exactly.
every little
So
one.
a lot of students I know from Asia, they really expect that you correct mistakes.
Yeah.
And because for them, a teacher, say our teachers are there and say they can help us this way. They kind of expect that you do this.
What are you being lazy? No, that's what I was trying to get you to learn.
That's right. But so see, this is so that in that sense, what would you do then?
Well,
if you be the situation.
if and I'm remembering a specific student last summer that came up to me about that. And I told her, I was like, well, this isn't, we're trying to, the goal of this class is for this, and this little aspect isn't really that important for our overall goal. Now, if you want to work on that, we can, but let's make sure we get this overall goal taken care of, and then we can work on these little things.
Exactly. Oh, wow. This is very nice answer. Yes, of course. Good. So once again, this is something to do with our student outcome and course goals. Very good.
I just thought of something too when I was reading this about individual background, and I bring in and how that also correlates with feedback, because in Africa, I noticed that when the way feedback, the teachers, the dynamic is a little different. Teachers is the boss, the expert in the field. And so when a teacher gives you feedback, it's usually it's brutal. They can even tell you, this is rubbish, the question well, Charlotte, go fix it. So as somebody coming from that background, you develop thick skin after a while. You get to handle it. Okay, I understand. Okay, I will fix it. And as a teacher, it shaped how I viewed feedback. When I first started teaching here, because I taught in France, and even in France, you can tell your student, this is rubbish, this part, we'll fix it. And they'll go and they're like, okay, and they'll fix it. And like in France, you can put student grades up. They'll post it. This person got first, this is second, this is so students are motivated to hear. Oh, FERPA, you can't expose a student's grade to anybody ever. So it's like those dynamics are different. Here, if you're giving feedback to a student, you kind of sandwich it, give the good one, bad one, and so these are differences that I've noted. And when I have students who come from those backgrounds, they want you to be harsh.
So usually, I still remember we always say American students are stupid.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Yeah.
So comparing with actually local students from other countries,
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
when we
here
were
they're
talking about
pampered.
Africa, then we were talking about my country.
Oh yeah, we post the grades when we take a test. You go to the classroom like, oh my God, this person was last.
It's funny, you mentioned the sandwich. I use the sandwich method, I guess, when comments. And that was what I was first told when I went to China to teach 6-year-olds. Sandwich, when you talk to their parents, sandwich, good comment and correction and another good comment. And I've taken that same thing and I use it here with my basically adult 18, 19-year-old students.
Was it successful?
Yes, I mean, it was for a different reason because it's a little kid and you're talking about children and parents. And here, it's kind of the same way, it's just,
I still feel this is a good way.
yeah, it still
Even
works.
though, like for example, Chinese students kind of like got a lot of criticized when the teacher do like a very authoritative.
Right.
Usually teachers are not authoritative role, but if the teacher is really kind of friendly, very approachable, of course, students may get very motivated, right?
Yeah.
So that's exactly what we want to learn from American style, right? This is exactly when we were in China, we were like, okay, we should learn from, say American scholars, and they, kind of like the American teachers do. See, exactly, those kids are treated this way, but our kids are not. Whatever, right?
Right.
I think a lot of changes take place. I just feel like we are global.
I don't think you can overlook
It is
though,
not.
specifically the marketing aspect of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Of course.
It's not totally pedagogical. There's a marketing aspect.
That's right.
Yeah, they don't want to get sued.
Over there, you want the parents to think, okay, we can improve this, but he still wants.
Right.
We got to bring him.
Yeah.
You're marketing your school.
We had a classmate, she was pregnant, and then she came to the professor and said, okay, sorry, the day that we have the final exam is my due.
Oh,
And then the
okay.
professor said, that's your problem. You should have thought about it.
Oh, are you kidding?
I still can remember that. They didn't care. The exam day was
her
exam
due
day.
Uh-huh.
So she came and told our professor, and then the professor said, that's your problem. You should have thought about it before. Already thought about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, there are a lot of contextual and social cultural factors that we may say take into consideration even when you do the feedback.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
My first year evaluation in the U.S., she's so mean. And I was like, oh, it's because I'm from that culture, because when they do something, no. That's that we don't do that. Fix it.
I see.
So after a while, now I've changed them.
So you said a lot of grammatical cues now, right?
Grammatical cues.
So yeah, we are learning this way, right? And so but by the way, pragmatics is also something that I'm really interested in. Okay, good. Now next one. Teachers should provide both encouragement and constructive criticisms through their feedback. So everybody knows that, right? We always want to say something good in the very beginning, right? But sometimes I still remember students. The teachers always feel like, what does this good mean? Sometimes does this good mean something not really good? That is very interesting because every time we want to actually tend to say something really positive, right? But if this is really not a good piece, right? But you want to definitely find something really strong, right? You still want to say something's good, right? But anyway, and that is something to do with the, say, linguistic features, right? How to even say, and write the, say, your comments is something that, say, you need you need to be strategic. Does that make sense? For example, you want to use statements, or you always use questions. The question, do you want something, or did you mean blah, blah, blah. Those different ways can lead to different results.
Yes.
Do you believe that? That's very interesting. For example, if I ask a lot of questions, instead of just like say very positive statement or even imperative mood, right? Maybe the result is different. Then I'll say, oh wow, they do something. Please do something. Blah, blah, blah. And then I feel like, oh, this is exactly what I want to incorporate in my revision, right? If you say like, do you ever consider something, or you may want to do something.
Conditional.
These are interesting. These are actually, we need to consider too, right? Later we will discuss this too when we read the sample comments. So what do we, say believe about these comments? So anything to improve or anything you want to follow, So anyway, we still, go ahead.
You do have to, I have to make sure, I don't use questions like you mentioned a lot, because especially with second language learners, you got to make sure they get what you really get.
That's right.
They might take the question so literally that they're missing maybe a subtext to it that you were trying to get across.
Yes. So that is again something to do with clarity, right? Or you want to make it explicit, right? Explicitly stated sometimes it's necessary. Okay. Now, specific questions to consider. So I will use these specific questions later when we discuss the comment. Okay. So the tools to provide teacher feedback. Usually we have text-based or video feedback. Now, what I will focus on here is: do you want to use rubrics, or you use coding scheme? Coding sheet, or you just want to use checklist. Have you ever tried on these different ways? Okay, which do you like? You like rubrics, coding sheet, or checklist?
I like the rubric.
You like the rubrics. So the rubrics give the students your expectations. They even can have this as a guidelines, right? Don't you think so? Not just for assessment, even for scaffolding say their thinking, right, or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and since the rubric is going to align with your goals, kind of.
As well, that's right.
It helps you as well.
Good point. Yeah, that's right. Then how about that coding sheet? We mentioned that, right? So did you ever try that one too? You don't like it, okay?
I haven't used that.
Okay, the coding sheet, right? So I give you a lot of codes, and you figure out one specific thing. I still remember something that is totally kind of like confusing. Is that hey, in this line, 3 grammatical mistakes. Find out these 3 grammatical mistakes. The students, did a lot of tried a lot of effort. That would be really hard for them, right? For example, you just say, okay, this line, 6 mistakes. You know what I mean? That would be really kind of like confusing, because you actually. So I mean, if you give them the conference, that would be good. So hey, what did you find out, right? So, but that would still a little bit embarrassing if they feel, oh, I just got 2, right? I just find 1.
So time consuming too
Yeah.
for them.
That's right.
And even they go and maybe they change the correct one.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the
Oh, exactly. That's right. Exactly. Especially for the say lower, relatively low, proficiency level. That's right. But the coding scheme, if you really try some of the basics one, we will discuss today. For example, the word choice. A lot of students have some problems with word choices because that is something to do with say translation. Because they try to translate, say the English words into use. For example, if they think in their native language,
Right.
they tend to translate when they write. Don't you think so? And I actually met a lot of students who, when I read the paper, I felt, oh, I know possibly this person want to use a certain word in Chinese, for example, right? But they just translated it so literally, and actually these two words do not actually have so much, important type connection. Does it make sense? In that case, you definitely want to point out, okay, word choice. Then think about another word. You want to have a substitute, right? Or like the agreement. This is easy. Everybody, if you know the rules, okay, my subject and verb, say there's no, the agreement because the third person, should have the something like say he did, he does, whatever, and then students will figure it out very easily, right? And I think that is good because we even do not need to correct it because that is actually still explicit. Does it make sense? So I would say some codes are still helpful, right? But you need to figure out in which way you want to use it based on the students' proficiency levels as well, right? And also checklist. Do you like the checklist? Have the students met these goals or have,
I have a checklist in the rubric for content. So to make sure that they covered all the things in the content, they have a checklist. So it's a checklist and inside the rubric.
Nice, very nice. Okay, good. So you combine these together, and you still have some, questions for them to consider. Good. I think usually you can use a checklist for a peer review session as well, right? The students will feel it's, manageable. When I do the peer review with others, right? I check if I don't think this is successful, and I write down the reason and in which way we can improve, right? Okay, I think that would be helpful too. The next one, summary and notes, or sometimes we call it commentary. So the summary, commentary, or in-text comments, which one do you like, or do you use both? We usually write final the comments, the summary, right? The commentary. Don't you think so? Did you ever just finish every in-text the comments and then?
I think, and this is for my first one, but my first paper I did summary. This one I wanted to try in-text comments. Almost universally they prefer the in-text.
Oh.
They like the in-text comments.
That's right, exactly.
And I don't know how much of that would translate to second language or not. But they like the idea that they could follow their paper and find out almost real time where I was instead of the end where it's kind of more of a global.
That's right, exactly.
This is what I did in the conference that we had with the students. So they had a hard copy, so while reading the paper, I corrected, and I put some comments on the margins while we were talking, and finally, I tried to put just a summary, at the end of the paper,
That's right.
That's what they should do for the next.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think I mixed kind of both of them.
Good. So that's to say we actually take advantages of the say in-text comments, as well as the commentary, right? The commentary. And sometimes if you really use those in-text comments, say deliberately, and then you may feel like you only need one or two sentences as your end notes. Don't you think so?
One quick comment, and my feeling was that even if I said something that in reference to the text in the summary, they never would go back and look. If I would say in page 2, so and so you needed, my feeling was they never went back to page 2 and
How
looked.
about my comments then?
But
I actually
if I put a text, they can just roll the thing over there and look at it, and they say, okay, now.
I understand. How about you?
I'm actually exactly that depends on the level of the student.
Okay.
We're a different cohort.
Because a PhD student is afraid, okay, if he makes these mistakes tomorrow, he will be a teacher, then he will be challenged by this problem. So he needs to know them.
That's right.
Yes. For example, when we talked about APA, I have studied maybe 2 or 3 books about it. But for a student, I don't know, just a freshman, he doesn't care about it. He's there just to get a grade.
That's right.
Or he doesn't know that he should care about it a lot. Just as far as he passes the course, that's okay.
Exactly. That's right. Exactly. Yeah, again, something to do with the students, say their say, levels in their, say, characteristics. That's right. Very good. So even I'm thinking about the video feedback, right? You show them exactly, for example, what specific resources, online resources you can get. Then you know, because you have the screencast video, right? So you can just put it out on the desktop, and then of course it can be captured, and the students can learn, right? So now, of course, they learn. You can give them further guidance. The next one, you want to praise or criticize? Praise or criticism? So of course, both, right? Yeah, both. You never want to see everything bad, right?
This paper is good, but
Yeah, we always like to say that, however, it would be better if you do something, right? Right. That's right. So, I think so. Questions or statements? This is something I want to clear.
I have never used questions, and so I don't know to ask them questions.
Yeah, you ask them questions. That's right.
Questions, but yeah, like I said, you have to be really clear on what your point of your question is. You know, like your question, could you have said this a little clearer? You know, or what, for another class, you know, what text is, does this, where could you specifically refer to?
That's right. It's just like citation, right? Yeah. I'm thinking about citation, of course. For example, you definitely may need a certain, say, citation there, but definitely there's something missing, right? So you definitely say something, right? Where did you, say, get this, right? So can you, say, include the citation here? Or you mean to say, include the citation?
Right.
Those are different, say, style and, say, think about it. Sometimes, say, we can actually mix this, totally depends on the situation. It seems to me that I sometimes use for questions too, sometimes use questions.
Yeah. I use questions when I want them to think further about
That's
something.
Right.
So
especially,
I'll ask questions like, how can you illustrate this?
Yeah.
Think about the home, the school in this context.
That's right.
And I leave it at that just to keep them thinking.
So I'm even thinking of like the global issues, usually like the contents, or theme, or evidence, right?
It still depends on the student, like what's your example, if that's common for your students, but if there's a common for us, the question could simply put, okay, why?
Right.
As where we are, we would understand exactly the point you were trying to make. So it depends on the student.
That's right. True. Good. Exactly. Okay. The feedback on content or form. So we mentioned that already, right? Okay. I don't want to spend more time on that. So we, provide those. Let us take a look at this specific comment. Appendix 7.1. On page 270.
The reason that comment comes up because Dr. Pickering put that on one of my papers. Okay, why?
Oh!
That comment on one of my papers. This one came up. Okay, good point. Why?
Okay. Now here you can see this is a sample paper, right? And then there is a sample commentary, and then we call this again the end summary commentary, right? So let us discuss this writing first, right? I'll give you 2 minutes to finish the reading, and then we'll discuss the writing first, and then the teacher's comment. Are you ready? Interesting writing, huh? Let us take a look at the requirement first. Did you notice that this is actually possibly a certain assignment in the, say, university writing class, right? Especially the writing for English language learners. ESL class section. Usually we have for mainstream students and for the ESL students. And you notice that actually they read the paper first, right? And then they need to, based on this reading. See, okay, we have a connection, right? So based on the reading, then, say the students need to actually respond to this specific prompt, right? The prompt is 9 always wrong. Why not? However, right after that, did you notice that the requirement goes like they need to consider both sides of the issue. See? And also they need to explain their opinions, right? So possibly they expect the students to comment on not only the bad side, but also the good sides, right? And also the students need to have the reference in article. So they need to say they of course learn already writing from resources, right? So they need to say this is one of the course goals that students need to respond to this question, but also remember you need to cite. So they need to say you need to have your facts there, you should have also certain quotations, as well as say a reference. Right? Then judging from that, let us come on the paper. Who would like to go first?
We had just talked about how good is lying, but they didn't give any examples about when lying is bad. If I were him, I would also give some examples when lying is bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so something to do with content, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good comment. Anything else?
Good examples. We're well organized and we'll come out together. But I feel like some parts were a little redundant, where you could have added, merged two paragraphs.
Okay, so we're talking about certain readings and organization. So for instance.
So for example, when she talked about the first example about the surprise party and how lying can be for good.
Mm-hmm.
That second example as well is also kind of tied to it. That's another example for the shrimp dinner.
Mm-hmm.
I would find a way to blend the two and put them in one paragraph and then start a new paragraph
to discuss
the other part.
That's right. So make it really complete because the requirement is like you need to comment on both sides. Yeah, sounds great.
Because they're both addressing the same issue that lying is good. So
good. So we have already touched upon the content and organization. Something else. What other aspects? Did you notice that since the requirement goes like you need to have the reference there, right? And also have the quotation. So that is to say, as an instructor, I'm looking for something, at least quote some, the important texts here, right? So you even use a certain, say, style, MLA style or AP style, whatever, to support your idea, right? So for me, when I read this paper, I feel like, how can this be highly related to the reading? Because I want you to demonstrate your knowledge of reading as well, right? So actually, I think that is a little bit missing here because I really want to know. For example, usually these students just have like, okay, Goodrich mentioned something is also exciting. Then she said, just like one or two, kind of like the introduction, and then you continue to say something from there.
Kind of what I was going to say. I say it a lot with my students.
Yeah.
Is make sure you incorporate a quote in your paper,
That's right.
and they will grab a quote, force it into their essay,
That's right.
yeah.
and there's no analysis of how that fits into the bigger scheme.
Exactly. So that is, once again, this is what we need the students to learn to have the quotation sandwich, right? That is to say, you have a certain introduction there, and then quote, and lastly, how this means to you, how this related to your personal experience, so that can help you reach your goal for this writing, right? So what you need to interpret this quotation. Does it make sense? Right. This is so important for students. Most of the students actually miss that part. They just throw the quotation there, then they continue to discuss something else. But you do not think that is really, say a good sandwich, of course, right? So that is missing. A lot of parts missing. This is exactly what the college students need to learn, right? I would say maybe the high school students can do like this, but for college students, you got to, actually synthesize reading.
This, but you don't tell us what the quote's telling us.
That's right. Okay, exactly. Okay, be specific and explicit. Okay, here, right? Any other things you want to comment if you were, this student's teacher?
I'm sorry, I just have a question. So sometimes people have quotations from very famous people. But those quotations are very famous.
You don't
So what should we do with them?
hate. Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't know. For example, say Mahatma Gandhi said or stated, then what should we do? You listen to a TED talk, then you think, oh wow, this is a great, can be a good quotation.
Yeah. What do you think?
I hesitate to use those in my papers.
Well, I say you don't have to cite them because a lot of times it's apocryphal and you don't even really know if that person actually said that. You just give. So if it's a well-known quote, you don't have to cite it.
Or you can say an old adage or something says.
It says like that, right? I would say I really didn't. I thought that that would be a little bit strange if I see somebody like cite those really famous, even like the page number of the books, whatever the citation. I feel that's so weird for me because usually if you use that, I possibly would say you would prefer to use that in the speech or like the oral presentation. I mean, for the academic writing, I never did that, to be honest, right? I mean, I just think of the genres I actually encountered during my PhD study, But if I needed to, for example, pass the GRE test or whatever, that would be something that would be really natural if you have some certain person. I mean, this big name says like that, and the reputation there, no page number at all. That's definitely acceptable. Don't you think so? Right? What do you think? Yeah. Good question.
Because I used one of them from Steve Jobs, so I just wanted
For what?
from Steve Jobs.
Oh, I see.
I watched the TED talk, and then he said something about peer feedback. I wrote it down, so like I should use this as a quotation. I was like, how should I use it? Just like a 2015 TED talk.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Anything else?
Maybe it's too early to talk about mechanical stuff in the second draft.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. To be honest, I think the error treatment is not what I'm here, right? But anyway, if you want to, you can point it out a little bit like in the last paragraph. You say in addition, say pay more attention to the language accuracy, whatever, if you feel that's necessary, right? Just kind of like take one sentence. You don't want to kind of like say, or I would say. To be honest, I just feel like the students really needed to learn more, like how to fold, even use some specific, like academic words to fold. For example, if you want to have the reporting verbs, do not always use say, mention. Those are too kind of like at least they do not look good. Because you really want to actually become a little bit sophisticated, you want to use sophisticated words a little bit, at least here. I'm talking about the variation, right? So you can definitely somebody argue something, or say somebody informs us something, right? So this is exactly what I talk. Usually, I told my freshmen, competition class, because they tend to use a certain reporting verbs. So, I mean, easy reporting verb, and they do not actually have the variation. So I commented that as well. So because in our textbook, by the way, I use the they say I say, the moves matter, and driving, I love that book because in that book we even have one chapter discussing reporting verbs. Right. So I wanted them to see this is actually one of the course goals. This is the objectives. You need to learn how to use the reporting verbs. Right? Okay, once again, this should be reported. So how about the comment? What do you think? Do you think the comment
So nice, like a little letter.
Yeah, something, I don't know, for example, this is, so how should I say this? Okay, it is related to me or not as a teacher. For example, yes, as far as I like, when you want to start an essay, you should start it with a general idea. But this one starts just with his own opinion. He expresses his feeling and says, lying is not always wrong. So, I mean, for example, now imagine I'm going to give a comment on this paper. So I should mention this. Okay, no, you shouldn't start an essay with your own ideas or feelings. You should start it with a general idea and later go to your own
Okay, so then you say,
opinion.
good. So do you think that you want to actually add more critical aspects in a commentary?
Yeah, just yeah. So can I do that? I mean,
That's the first
okay?
sentence,
Oh.
right? Right? Still, we want to begin with the positive,
Oh.
say, aspect and a little bit. Usually I do think that my positive, if this is the paper that definitely needs improvement, I usually really do not have much. Like when I talk about the, say strong points. I still focus on the, say, points that they really need to improve. So I really you can see a longer section, but if those are really good ones, not like that. But during I write this, say passive, I would say the negative aspects. I would not say negative. I would say constructive. I'm very concrete and very specific. And then of course, I try to be really sound very convincing to feel like everything is actually correct. What I give you is actually say correct because I based on this evidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
But still, you want to use the language that is still like dialogue, right? You want to use a language that is still, they feel like okay, still approachable, and I'm trying to do like that, right? But you really do not say something, say not evidence based, right? Because especially you criticize others, you say something is not good enough, but you have strong evidence to show that, and you show them. Right? I like this one. I think she did a good job here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mention about that.
And I've noticed when you put students' name in their feedback, they really like this.
Oh, exactly.
They really like
What do you
it.
think so? I think so. I really feel this is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think so?
Yeah.
But sometimes we forgot, but I try to. I try to every time, provide feedback, people say something like a great job, something, whatever, say these are the, excellent points.
Yeah.
This is a good point. Yeah, I think so. Because people will see, students will say, oh wow, this is maybe generic.
Mm-hmm.
This applies to everybody in this paper, right? Okay, anyway, good. Do we have any further comments on this? Okay, this is a good example here, right? But anyway, we still want to add something, based on our own, say, understanding of how we can help students achieve the course goals, right? But
This is very long though. I'm thinking if you have 20, 30 students, you're gonna write for everyone, like this whole level.
Of course not.
So what is the line between the suggestions and appropriating things? Because there's a lot of suggestions here where, almost giving the ideas of these are ideas I'm going to see. So is there a line where there's too much of that? Because he's saying, basically telling him exactly what I want you to write for your next paper. So I know you need specific suggestions, but is there a line there where your suggestions should be vague enough to give the writer more agency to get corrections? I don't know quite how to frame this.
I know what you mean. So you feel like these are kind of like too concrete in order
Yeah, he's almost rewriting.
to say like this is exactly what I want you to do.
Because this is reminiscent of what I would do in the writing center. These kind of comments where I would, okay, you need to do this here, you need to do this. Because it's so specific that the student can go back and, they're not really correcting things so much on their own, they're just doing exactly what the teacher told them.
Okay. Okay, but for me, I think these are acceptable and also those are appropriate for me. Because exactly, for example, like the first one, right? The point is that, say trying to, have one paragraph or two paragraphs that define the types of lines that are helpful. Because at least in my requirements, I explicitly indicate that you should comment on both sides, right? And the second one is about your story. I feel that one is a little bit kind of like debatable because I feel people will feel like this is not, say, for example, this argument is not does not really say sound clear, right? Because logically it's not good enough, right? I think still, right? I think that's okay, right? And then the last thing, something to do with citation, right? Because it is missing there. Don't you think so? They even didn't mention like what is the summary about their paper. Once again, this is reading writing connection. You at least need to say something about the reading because I, as a teacher, want to see whether you have already comprehended this reading quite well, right?
Right.
Something's missing. Yeah, I think that's acceptable because this is exactly what I want to. Well, I guide you, try to achieve your goals.
Okay. I guess I was focusing mostly on the second commentary on the
That's
confusing article or the confusing paragraph.
Okay.
Because that's as I was reading that was the one, and that's in
For example, what you might have done differently or better.
the story of your friend's birthday is very confusing, and then he kind of sets up. This is
makes sense.
almost like he's saying, "This is how I would have wrote it."
Oh, it makes sense here. So seems like you kind of like believe the teacher here tended to take over the
Right.
test.
She says, "See if you can make
Exactly.
this better by explaining what you might have done differently, and B, why you think these positive aspects."
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Partially, I would say we still want to keep that point, number 2, but we do not really need to kind of like even suggest this so specific because they can actually have a different ways to solve the problems.
Right.
Don't you think so?
Yeah.
Then I think that's better. But still, we want to keep it because we still think that this specific evidence. I mean, for instance, birthday is kind of problematic, right? Because this is something that we want to fix it. We want to say it, but you really don't need to say like, oh, do this and that, whatever. See?
I really liked her language. It's very
Yes.
tactful, but
Yes.
very. You see, language it's the same
Exactly.
word, but you just change it a different way.
Yeah.
Because when my second year of teaching, I had a little notebook because I realized like I used to use words like this is incorrect. So then I started writing other words like it could be appropriate or it can be more meaningful. Or
Yes, good. That's right.
it's effective.
Right. Exactly.
You should have seen my first year evaluations. It was brutal.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly. That's the reason I told you guys these specific questions we should bear in mind. Even the languages, the questions, the statements, those linguistic features, pragmatic cues, those are important, right? Good. Let us discuss the error treatment. Just now we mentioned that the writing should definitely, be evaluated from different aspects, right? Now let us really talk about the forms, especially for English language learners, English as a second language or English as a foreign language learners, or some other, second language learners. We definitely want to comment on the grammatical mistakes, right? The errors. What's the difference between the errors and mistakes, by the way?
I think error is more fossilized as something's a pattern, whereas a mistake is one time.
That's right. So that is, to say, we always, say this is error treatment rather than mistake treatment. Sometimes we do not need to actually treat the, fix this mistake at all, right? But let us discuss the errors here, right? So error feedback can be helpful. We agree. Right. So the literature shows that the adult acquires language. Sometimes they actually say made mistakes, and if you have these errors made salient or explicit to them, then it would be better because to avoid fossilization, right? So that is of course very good because they can continue developing their language competence, right? Secondly, the research also shows that we actually still prefer those semantic error treatment. Okay, so that is to say we need to follow a certain rule or certain route to provide error feedback, right? So, for example, the studies, comparing the accuracy of the text generated by students who received error correction versus those who do not or who didn't receive error, treatment. You can see those who receive the treatment actually get better results, right? And then the studies that measure increases in linguistic accuracy over time. So that is to say, in a longitudinal study, also it shows that again, in the long run, you provide this feedback will definitely pay off. something, right? Okay, so this is something that we want to know first. Then, how can you distinguish the errors and the styles? Sometimes we say, hey, we want to say something about the student's style, right? But that is not something to do with the errors. So what's the difference here? The error usually consists of the morphological, syntactic, and lexical deviations from the grammatical rules of a native language that violate the expectations of the native speakers. Okay, while style refers to something that is related to teacher's sense, that a particular word or phrase might flow more smoothly or idiomatically than text, rather than to any violation of the underlying grammatical patterns. So we actually see a lot of instances like the grammatic, it sounds grammatically, right? But it does not sound idiomatic. Does it make sense? So we definitely see a lot of examples in our students' papers. Don't you think so? We feel, as a native speaker, I will say like this, but not like what you said, Peter. Is that right? So this is something we need to, make a distinction, right? Because we really focus on the error treatment here, and we focus on the grammatical mistakes, right? But when do you comment on the style? Is there any chance? Is there any chance that you feel I want to comment on the style a little bit?
When it affects comprehension, like I've had students when they try to paraphrase something, it ends up coming off as mechanical because they're using synonyms for a word because they don't want to use the same word, and so then it sounds like a robot talking.
Oh, okay.
So then in that case, I feel like I have to talk to them about that because so it sounds more like a natural conversation.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay, so you feel like that even a little bit hinders, the reader's understanding the context, that become it stick out so strikingly there, right? Then for me, if there's something that is too formal, informal, and I definitely want to comment on it. Also, say when we talk about the style, we think about the formal style or informal style. Especially, I feel like a lot of academic writing, students still have a lot of conversational language there, right? You don't really want to use a lot of local colloquials, right? Even those phrases, you really want to avoid, because we use them in the daily life, but we don't want to use many in the academic writing. I feel this is not only one of students, what they do. I mean, they at least usually I find like at least 5% in my previous class. They seem to actually understand everything, but when you read the academic writing, that is not what we expect, right? Especially like those students who actually were brought up in America, for example, they came here at the age of, as a teenager maybe, they actually really have pretty good oral English, whatever, but for academic writing, I'm not sure, whether they get a really rigid training about that. I don't know, but I just feel like the immigrant students, 1.5 generation, sometimes we call, right? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
1.5 generation. I feel they need to work on the academic writing. But I'm not saying that the native speakers do not have that problem still. Sometimes you can see that, too much, too many informal expressions, suggestions. So when you in your ESL classes, you want to focus on the errors that are patterned and rule governed. So it can be addressed constructively through feedback and strategy training. So that to say, we try to help them in order for them to avoid such errors in the future. Okay, and especially this is a rule governed because I should show you these are the rules. You should follow the rules, right? So if you do not understand the rules, you will make these errors again and again. Okay, these are the errors the English as a foreign language teachers as students usually made. So go through all of them. Then I only just want to focus on the run-on and the fragments. I sent you the handouts here. Right? Any other things? I think it's very easy. We actually comment on that, right? I completely believe everybody, comment on the word choice, verb tense. You should use passive voice, but you use active voice, or you should use simple present tense, but you use the past tense, whatever, right? So I think you comment on that too. And punctuation, articles, word forms, spelling. However, I'm thinking about this, run-on and fragments. Do you know the differences? Run-on sentences. What are the sentences? What sentences are run-on sentences? So I give you the handout. There are two types, right?
Pure sentences and comma slices.
That's right. So are you familiar with these two?
Yes, the comma slice, only because I've seen it so rarely.
So then you need to read out. These are exactly something that you want to point out in your students' writing, because I encounter so many instances. We just feel like, definitely we need to teach the students. You cannot do like this. So, for instance, if you take a look at your handout, those specific, run-on sentences can be something. You have a certain sentence, and then you have another sentence. Then you use a comma to connect the two. You just saw a lot of examples. This is not correct. You want to use either the semicolon, or you just feel, you just have the period, and then you start a new sentence. Does it make sense? I do think that a lot of students make such mistakes. So sometimes then I feel this is error if they tend to occur always in this person's writing, and then you need to tell the student this is a comma size, what we call one type of run-on sentence. And always avoid using the comma to connect the two independent sentences, because you do not have some other sentences, some other words. For example, you can say although, because, whatever, right? If you use that such, then that's okay. But since this is independent, say my cat meowed angrily, comma, I knew she wanted food. So of course you can say so I knew she wanted food. Or you just have a certain period there. But usually we continue to teach them, you need to have a certain, conjunction here, or a certain transition, Does that make sense? Right? And then another one is that these students just forget a lot of punctuations, right? So that is they fuse the sentence. So this is out of just the ignorance. They not use themselves. They just feel like say they're busy when they type. Maybe this can be a typo, whatever. We just forgot to have a certain comma inserted. Does it make sense? So if you take a look at it, fuse the sentence, my professor read my paper, then you can say that this is another sentence. She said it was excellent, right? Then you need a certain, punctuation, right? So if you want a certain punctuation, you can definitely have something like semicolon maybe, or even a hyphen, right? Something, or you can just start a new sentence, right? Usually we suggest that students start a new sentence. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So you, as a teacher, need to know the terms. So next time you say, hey, you're a writing teacher. Have you ever heard of fuse the sentence or say comma splice? Naturally, of course, I know this. The fragments is something different. Fragments is actually students sometimes make these mistakes too, like these errors. They just have they believe they have already write a complete sentence, but that's not. That is just we call clause, right? Sometimes they feel like the gerund, the ing seems like the verb, but that is not the complete verb. That's the reason why we say this is a fragment. They need to further work on. Is that clear? Okay, good. So I do think that these are the comments. Sometimes we forgot to comment on the student's writing. Next one, the feedback. You want to do selective or comprehensive? I don't want to, say comment on this all one by one because we have already learned this. We mark some errors because we want to have a, say prioritization here. Because sometimes we feel this links to our course goals, right? Then we want to tease out those important features. So that's the reason we need to be selective. Other than that, we should also think about the stage. Is this the first draft or is this the final draft? In the final draft, we want to focus on the forms as well. We want to focus on the errors as well. Is that right? Okay. You want to label it, or you want to just locate it? We're talking about locate, right? You can just say have a lot of underline. Do you like to like that? You underline it. Hey, fix this. I underline this. This is something wrong. Or you label it. So this is something to do with word choice. The WW, right? This is something to do with the verb tense. Then you said the VT, right? So do you want to label it, or do you just want to locate it, or you don't want to use both? Totally depends on your course context, right? But once again, when you do your assignment this week, think about the students' needs, right? Do you? I encourage you to try some of them here. Some techniques here. You will figure it out whether the students love it or feel it efficient or not. So think about the labeling. You try to teach them. See, if I use WW, that means word choice or word forms, right? If I use tense, verb tense, I should have VT, whatever, right? All this knowledge you can learn on page 288 and 289. So take a look at that here. For example, you can have one broader and narrow categories. The broader categories goes like you always comment on those general trends. For example, something wrong with the word choice, then you can see WW. Or something wrong with your word form, you also use WW. Did you notice that? I personally like to use the narrower category because I want it to be really explicit and very clear. Sometimes students got very confused. Do they just really need to change the verb form, or this word does not make sense, or this word is not idiomatic, right? So that's the reason why I like the narrow category. Because here, for example, if this is a verb form, you notice that VF is labeled there. If you notice that in the narrow category, VF is verb form. So they need to say, hey, you should use like or something, right? Not like. But if I said word choice, then you definitely want to choose a different word, right? So I prefer second one. What do you think?
Yeah. Because the broader one can be a little ambiguous.
That's right. Like the student to figure out, is this what I need to do? Just like what we mentioned, the indirect feedback, right? Remember last time? That's not what we mentioned. Okay, there are 7 mistakes in this 9, whatever. Now, direct or indirect. Think about this. If you want to correct them directly, or you want to provide corrective feedback, or you want to just say, hey, these are the errors that you will need to work on, and then you include a certain note there. If you notice that on page 289, you have a good example here. So that is to say, if you do not want to correct it directly, you can do option C here. So for instance, you say, be sure to check your verbs to see if they are in the right tense, past or present, and check your word choice, right? Sometimes the students tend to confuse, or even though they know, but they made a mistake, so they made the errors in the writing, they tend to sometimes go like the past tense and sometimes the present tense, but usually you want to be consistent, right? So you tell them and try to be consistent in your writing. So they be consistent in the verb tense. Then they know for sure. Then they'll go to check and then figure out their mistakes and errors, right? Okay, so think about that. I don't know whether you like direct feedback or not. I used it before as well when long ago when I taught at a Chinese university. I feel students want to know exactly what specific word it should be, whatever, and I have the correct feedback. But you do not always have direct feedback. Sometimes you want to have the indirect feedback. Still, have them. If there is a pattern there, have them think about, the articles. Okay. Is that clear? That is to say, I would like you to think about these different techniques, the option, so the categories, right? The categories to use the codes, and also you want to consider direct as well as indirect feedback, right? But meanwhile, I would say I would definitely want you to have both commentary. So that is to say, when you do the in-text comments, think about these different techniques, right? But if that is something to do with content, something to do with organizations, use comments. Does it make sense? You have the Word document, right? Then usually you can kind of if you want to track changes, that is definitely direct feedback. Think about that. You track changes, then you want to comment on the specific grammatical mistakes. But if you just want to comment on the global issues, you can use the in-text comments. Does it make sense? Moreover, you definitely want to have the good summary, the say end notes, right? So this is my expectation here. I uploaded to our course site assignment sheet here. So as you can see here, I would like you to find 2 samples. Is that easy? I think it's easy to find 2 samples from your students.
A little hard for me to find some.
You mean English as a language students?
Yeah.
Then you would definitely want to check the online say resources, because there are lots of say TOEFL samples over there. If you have that keyword TOEFL, you can see a lot.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
And then email me if you still have some problems, right? I think because my previous students, if they didn't have the say students there, so their own say students, they definitely found out a lot of good examples there from the
Should
website.
work on 2 papers or just 1?
2.
2.
So I would like you to, that's not to be very long. Usually it is kind of like the 1 or 2 page paper, right? So that is to say you just need say 4 page paper, double space, right? Okay, I can be very flexible with your, but I just really want to see these 2 samples, okay? Then 2 samples, and then specifically you want to provide the in-text comments, including error treatments, as well as the end commentary. Does that make sense? Okay, it's easy. Then remember, the most important part here is you not only comment on this, of course you treat the errors. You want to include your reflection. So that is to say, after you analyze these specific papers, you think about the process of the ways to analyze, right? To provide feedback. You may want to address the following questions. What principles guided you as you responded to the student papers? What struggles, did you have in responding to student papers? And how can you respond effectively to students writing in general in the future? Does that make sense? So that is to say, I would like you to have a good reflection. So you analyze the first one, provide in-text feedback, the comment, the commentary. Then you continue with the second one, and maybe you can try different techniques. You can figure it out and try to incorporate what we've learned in this class into this assignment. Does it make sense? Then right after your analysis of the 2 papers, only write 1 reflection. So for example, you say, hey, look at this. The first paper, I tend to use these specific techniques because blah, blah, blah. While my second one, I use something different, blah, blah, blah. You got it? Wonderful.